Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for today's Business Success Series presented by Manulife on the age of fraud, how to best protect yourself and your business. My name is Allison Mitchell, and I'm a program manager with the Greater Kitchener-Waterloo Chamber of Commerce. Before we get started, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge that we live and work on the traditional territory of the Neutral, Anishinaabe, and Haudenosaunee people, as we seek a renewed relationship based on the foundation of mutual understanding and respect. As participants in today's event, we are coming together as one. We believe everyone is free to be their true self and receive the exact same respect and opportunity regardless of age, ethnicity, gender, culture, identity, sexual orientation, beliefs, or language. We hope you will join us in fostering a positive environment here today that is safe and welcoming space for all. We know that there is more that we can do, and we are committed to listening and learning and growing as we go. Today's session would not be possible without the continued support of our sponsors. Our title sponsor for the Business Success Series is Manulife. Our platinum sponsor for the series is the Immigration Partnership, and March's sponsor is RBC. These organizations are committed to supporting our local economy and providing businesses with the resources and tools they need to thrive. Just before the session starts, I'd like to go over a few quick reminders. Please ensure that your microphone is muted throughout the presentation so that we can reduce any background noise. If you have a tech-related question, please comment in the chat section, and one of our representatives from our team will be in contact with you momentarily. And if you have a question for today's speakers, please add it to the chat throughout the presentation. All attendees will be sent a recording of today's presentation, and it will also be made available on the Greater Kitchener-Waterloo Chamber site. I now have the privilege of introducing today's guest. Tanya Sklar is a commercial accountant manager with RBC. Tanya is from the KW community and studied business and accounting at Wilfrid Laurier University. She has since been with RBC for 20 years. Tanya has spent approximately 12 years in different retail banking positions and the last 8 years in commercial banking. Her role is helping existing and new businesses grow by opening the doors to all RBC partners and resources available. She has a specialization in retail and franchise. However, business services and supply chain is also part of her client portfolio. I'd also like to welcome Katarina Pern, who is a business account manager with RBC Royal Bank. For the last 9 years, she has been providing clients with financial advice in business and personal banking. Working in the region of Cambridge, Kitchener, and Waterloo, Katarina enjoys sharing her expertise, helping people with their business, and making new friends. On more than one occasion, she was invited to the YMCA's women's e-commerce classes, as well as Conestoga College entrepreneur classes, to participate as a guest speaker and talk about starting a business, obtaining business financing, and general advice about business banking. Thank you both for joining us today.
Thank you, Allison. Hello, everyone.
So today,
thank you so much. Hi, everyone.
Great. Thank you. Our topic today is fraud, and fraud can be a huge topic. So I'm wondering where we should start and who would like to start us off.
I'll start it off with this one. Thank you, Allison. So yes, fraud is huge, and what we're going to touch on is financial fraud involved with business banking specifically. Particularly in this hour, we'll talk about the type of fraud they are, what to watch out for, what the recourse is, how businesses can protect themselves against it, and what they should do if fraud occurs at their place of business.
Okay, great. Why do you think we're seeing such an increase in fraud?
I can answer that. Thanks, Allison. The answer is development. With the amazing growth and development of business, technology, healthcare, trade, general improvement of life, come more and more creative fraud. possibilities and options, and creative fraudsters are really, we can applaud them for how many things they have come up with. The pandemic also changed so much in our lives, changed the economic, political state of our country, the world. Technology advanced so fast, and it has never advanced this fast before. Increase in e-commerce, availability of federal financial assistance, specifically right now, remote work. It all brings its own potential dangers, right, to the safety of the company's information, company's databases, and there is just the increased dangers to the payment vehicles, falsified checks, wrong wires, stuff like that. So it's development.
Okay, great. And so what types of fraud are we seeing in our region? Because I know, again, fraud is a huge topic. There's lots of different types of fraud. Maybe you can speak to the types of fraud.
Sure, I'll start us off with this one, and Katrina, you can jump in after. So, I mean, fraud is ever present and evolving, like you said, Katrina, and unfortunately, we see victims too frequently, here and in the news, and unfortunately many go unreported. A big part of what we do is leading with advice, educating yourself, and staying current will go a long way in protecting you and our community as well. What we see in businesses still is check fraud, and a lot of check fraud, and what we encourage daily is our clients to switch to electronic payment methods. And that also helps eliminating fraud, because it helps eliminate mail interruption. So your checks will not get stolen as electronic payments or copied or altered, which we still see daily. Another type of fraud that we see is working with unknown suppliers, in particular, who want untraceable payment methods. So that's something to watch out for. So if they say pay me with a gift card, for example, right? Or they'll send you a request to change their payment account information. Always pick up the phone, call to verify who the change request is coming from, and ensure that you're using a phone number that you have in your system, not that's in their email string. And that kind of goes hand in hand with phishing emails, which is huge nowadays. Normally here at RBC, we say we have a 6-second rule. So if you receive an urgent email, take those 6 seconds and ask yourself, does it feel unnecessarily urgent? And if it does, it most likely is a scam, right? Unfortunately, email scams are one of the most popular methods fraudsters use to steal money from companies, commercial businesses, really anybody that they can reach out to via email. And often we ask ourselves, how do they do that? And they will do it by using spoofing, spear phishing, and malware tactics to infiltrate company networks in order to gain access to email confidential information such as passwords, financial accounts data, usernames. So, and it really is important just to know that email risk doesn't discriminate. Anyone can fall for a fraudulent email. So you might ask yourself, what is that terminology? What is spoofing? And really what it is a scam in which criminals try to obtain personal information by pretending to be a legitimate business or another known trusted source for your business. Spear phishing is another way, and that is an email or electronic communication scam that's targeted towards a specific individual, organization, or a business. And although often intended to steal data or for malicious purposes, cyber criminals may also intend to install malware on a targeted user's computer. Mm-hmm. And I've seen that in the last few years. An example is printer updates where malware gets installed. And so all malware is a software intentionally designed to cause disruption to your computer server, to your client network, so to leak private information, gain authorized access to information or the system, right, which will interfere in your security and privacy. So when we say when in doubt, search aloud, and that's what you want to do. Double check the sender's address and the URLs. Fishy emails and websites usually contain slight differences that you can notice. So when you're in doubt, do search. So try to do your own research, reach out to people, see if they received similar emails, and in fact, to see if it is legit, right? So just be skeptical. And usually if it appears to be too good to be true, it likely is, and it likely is a fishy email. And Katrina, you might have to add to this.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, I would think that the listeners would probably say, wow, there's a lot, but I'm just going to add even more. So it's not over yet, right? So I would talk about card skimming. Card skimming, that's a very common fraud. We hear about that at the bank a lot. It's performed with the cards, so debit cards and credit cards. Card skimming involves criminals stealing debit or credit card numbers and corresponding PIN codes, or not even PIN codes. You know, sometimes you just go online, you don't need a PIN code, right? So they steal your debit card number and the name on the card, either electronically or through the ATM machine. Most likely the ATMs that are not in the bank vestibule, because bank vestibule has cameras, etc. But I mean, nobody's protected, so just be vigilant all the time. So this can result in unauthorized withdrawals from the victim's account. The credit card fraud is like the most common type, and the credit card fraudsters, they're not only using your card and your name online, they are pretty confident. They can walk into business, they can buy things with the wrong card, with the tap, right? There are over 68 million credit cards in Canada. So just in circulation in somebody's hand, right? One person can have a bunch of credit cards, right? One for Home Depot, one for over here, one for Costco. So there's a lot. And although less than 1% of these cards are compromised, it's still actually hundreds of millions of dollars, right? It's 1% of 68 million. That's a lot. Most cases, the credit card fraud would arise when the purchase is made on account without the account holder's consent. So account holder then can dispute this transaction, but your business will still be out, right? So if the fraudster came, bought a bunch of merchandise or services, etc., paid, and then the credit card company has told you it's fraud, you're still out that merchandise, your store still will have losses. So as I said, there's card present fraud, and then there is card not present fraud. So card present fraud would be physically present during the transaction using tap. Nobody really checks ID with a card, right? You just tap. So those people are confident, they're friendly, they're new to your store, they're making larger than normal orders, maybe buying items in multiples. They don't want to use a PIN, so they're like, I just want to tap. I really don't like it anymore. You know, a lot of people say they forget their PIN. This is totally normal. Card not present fraud simply means that the card is not present, so it would be over the phone or on the internet. So this is the fastest growing type of fraud, because you can just put your credit card on any e-commerce website. So there are many variations. One could sound like this. Somebody calls you, says, I would like to buy something over the phone, take my credit card number, and then my son will come pick it up. So then they come pick it up, and then this transaction is reported fraudulent. So you're out your merchandise or products. Or a fraudster will call and ask for delivery, and then it will be shipped or delivered elsewhere. So you will even have to spend your time, and then it's fraud as well. So the cards fraud is the biggest one. But we also wanted to touch on the Waterloo Regional Police website, because there's not only bank fraud. So the Waterloo Regional Police website also advises people about scams such as emergency scams, most likely done with CRA. So the script would sound like this. The scam con artist will call you and say, I work for the CRA and immigration department or something, and you have to pay immediately, or you'll go to jail, or your husband will go to jail, or you get deported. Unfortunately, I know of someone who was a victim of this fraud, and they scared this client. I used to work in personal banking 5 years ago, and they scared this client so much that with all this conversation, I tried to get the client to tell me why they need this money. The client got so frustrated that asked to speak to my manager, because I was trying to vigilantly see, like, the urgency shouldn't be there for CRA, like it's going to be okay. So the client was a victim of fraud, unfortunately. So the other option could be that con artist will appeal to your emotions. Again, they will have two people on the phone, and they'll maybe act like your husband or your spouse or your wife, whoever, and say, I'm here in the lawyer department and they're going to deport me right now. And then the other person will grab the phone and say, okay, his time for the phone is over. You have to pay me now. So like they are artists and actors for sure. There is also lottery and prize scams. Let me just confirm with Allison.
We can still hear you.
Okay, good. Okay,
yep,
my Zoom
yep.
kind of disappeared. Okay, so sorry, I keep talking. There's one more. So lottery and prize scams. You will receive a random call letter, and that one a lot of people are very vigilant about, because it's usually automated. So once you follow up, you'll be prompted to pay a service fee or tax claim on this prize, because the lottery, you need to pay a tax or something. So you actually, in Canada, you do not pay taxes on lottery winnings. And no legitimate contest requires you to pay money in advance. So that's a very big part of it. And right now that the COVID rules are lifted, you might be booking travel, and everybody would think that travel will maybe get cheaper now that more people are going, more people are using the websites, etc. So booking a vacation, that's another scam that's going on right now. So it's exciting but stressful. So make sure that you know the travel agent, or make sure that you know this website, and be vigilant on what you click on.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. It can be overwhelming with the amount of fraud that's happening right now. And I mean, I can just say from personal experience, working at home the last couple of years on an individual level, we still have a landline here, and the number of scam calls we get every day, multiple. Like, we just don't bother answering the phone anymore. And so I can see how people, might answer it and might think it's real. I had somebody in my family, an elderly person, who they picked up the phone and somebody on the other end said, "Grandpa," and it was that kind of scam. And it, obviously it was a scam, and thankfully they didn't. They got off the phone, which was great. But there's so much fraud and scam going on right now that it can be really overwhelming. Tanya, I just wanted to clarify something you said. We heard about credit card fraud, we heard about card fraud. You mentioned check fraud, and I'm just wondering if you can explain a little bit what check fraud looks like.
So yes, for sure. So you write a check to a company or to an individual and send it through the mail. That check may arrive or may not. If it can be stolen on the way there, or through right at their office or mailbox. And then what often happens is they will either photocopy the check, so to make completely new check, so doubling it. They can change who it's payable to. Okay.
Mhm.
And put their name as opposed to the company name, which is very
Mhm.
important because sometimes when you reconcile your accounting, you will see the check number 28 was cashed for $200. But what happens is it wasn't cashed by the intended person. So the name, the payer is changed and a
Mhm.
completely different individual cashed it. So you may only find out about this 2 months later when they reach out to you and say, we have not received the check that or your payment for the $200. Meanwhile, you think that it's been already cashed, which it has been just by a wrong individual. So it's very important to actually, when you're reconciling, to open the check itself to verify the name,
Mhm.
amount, date, right? Because sometimes everything will match up, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Uh, yeah, so anything
Okay.
really on that check, not only can you alter your name, but you can also alter the amount. So add a zero,
Right.
make another copy, and then especially now with technology, it's I've just encountered one that was double cashed. So
Mm.
the check was cashed 2 years ago, and then it was just recently redeposited via telephone or ATM,
Yeah.
right? So that's something else to watch out for and to ensure that you're constantly checking your account
Okay.
for those cash checks.
Okay. Great. Thank you. So if you are a victim of fraud, what recourse do you have to get the funds back?
Recourse. So yes, that's a really good question because when when it comes to electronic payments, that's why it's very important to actually end payments really is to check your account daily and to reconcile because when the payment is already gone from your account, it almost becomes best effort basis, that recourse. So we'll do the best to get your payment back, but it is not guaranteed. Especially if the funds are going internationally or to a different financial institution, which most of the time is the case. When it comes to check fraud, again, it depends on what was the cause of the fraud. So was the check altered? Was it copied? Which will determine how many days you have to for the recourse,
Mhm.
right? So that's also another kind of a note to remember on why it's important to check that all the time. But before even getting to there, it really falls down on you and your business to be vigilant of the fraud.
Mhm.
Because once the funds are gone, it is very difficult to get them back,
Okay.
right?
Okay. Okay. And does it become
Katrina,
more
did you have
difficult?
something to add to that?
No?
No, I think it's good. Yeah.
Okay. I was just going to ask, is it more difficult as the more time it passes to get the funds back?
Yes, for sure it is. It's definitely more difficult because, for example, for a forged drawer signature on a check, so if somebody else signed a check, for example, let's even your employee found your blank checks in the office and copied your signature. You only have one day to get that return back. So if you don't, if it's not caught within the one day, the business is out the money. Another reason to keep those checks safe as well, right? But and to monitor the account. But I guess another point to all the businesses is that when the banks do put a hold on your account when you deposit a check through ATM or even at the branch, and the bank does put a hold on your account, it is really doing so to protect you. So if the hold is there for 5 days, it kind of allows them that time frame to ensure that the legitimacy of the check, that it's really intended, that it's cashed by the person who it should be, that
Okay.
it's not sent by a fraudulent payer.
Okay. Okay. Great.
Yeah.
Um, Your video is a little bit frozen, Tanya. We can still hear you, but I don't know if maybe turning off your video and maybe turning it back on might help. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. And so just a reminder to our audience to, if you have any questions, please submit them, and our panelists will be happy to answer them. So, you know, what if I'm a victim of fraud? So I've discovered that I'm a victim. What are my next steps? What do I do?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I can take that one. I would say there are different places to report fraud depending on what kind of fraud it is. So there is local law enforcement if this fraud is specific to a call or text or email, or somebody you spoke with that's not really talking about your banking, right? So the local law enforcement ensures the police in your jurisdiction are aware that the scammer may be targeting local businesses. It's especially important to always call the police if you have lost money. Keep a listing of all the calls you make to the police and any file number they might provide you. So it would be a fraud report. Maybe you can get some money back if they caught the fraudster. The other one, if you want to report to Canadian Anti-Fraud Center or the Competition Bureau, so that is a really good way to do it, because then it will tell other people that this is a type of fraud, and they are all listed on the Canadian Anti-Fraud Center website. So it's a fraud reporting system, electronic form. You just fill it out, or you can call toll-free number at 1-800. You can also file a report of a misleading marketing practice. So even if something was, you weren't a victim yet, it was a misleading target practice, you can still report it with the Competition Bureau and they will look into it, which is really good. And then the last one would be your financial institution. So if you believe that your bank account, card, credit card, debit card, business, personal, so anything with banking, if you believe they've been compromised and unauthorized transactions have occurred, you should contact the bank. The bank reviews your complaint and takes responsibility for the loss, depending on what it was on and who did it, right? They will report it to the police, so you won't have to report to the police if it was specific in banking. If the bank determines that you're responsible for the loss, you might get a letter in writing from them, and then report it to the police as well. If you have already sent money, notify the financial institution and make sure that it's the institution that you sent money with. So for example, if we're talking about like untraceable methods, least traceable, like Western Union, MoneyGram and stuff like that, your bank won't have access to that. So you'll have to go to Western Union and talk to them, because our systems don't talk to each other. The bank, credit union, so credit card company, there's always 1-800 number on the back of your card, the plastic card. Internet payment service provider, so if it's, whoever, e-commerce site, and then tell them you're reporting fraudulent activity and they will transfer you to like the right place. The big part we would talk about is online banking, right? So if money is just disappearing, make sure that you, as Tanya said, check your statement or check your account in online banking every day so you can see what transactions are yours. And the biggest part is having the information, right? When we're calling the fraud department or even the police, all the information related to a scam might be useful. So take note of the name of the person, when it was, did they approach you or you approach them, where did you see this marketing, right? What they're trying to get you to do, stuff like that, right? Were you contacted by telephone or by mail or by email? Was it print out, online, screenshots? Take screenshots of web pages that you went to, write down a copy and paste exact website address. If you were contacted by email, save a copy of the email. If you found a website using a search engine like Google, provide the search terms. So for example, you're looking at travel Dominican December, put like that search button exactly, travel Dominican December, and the ad would come up, and that's like a fraudulent ad. Keep all your notes, keep all the receipts or canceled checks or copies of emails, pamphlets, phone bills. Basically keep all the documents, and it might be important. The other part that not everybody knows about is that fraud alert could be put on your credit bureau. So Equifax and TransUnion are the two credit bureau reporting companies, and they can get a free credit report immediately to you if you need to check it. And you can also put a fraud alert on there. And then your Better Business Bureau, as all business clients, business owners know, Better Business Bureau will report scams. You can report scams there too. So banking, identity theft, financial scams, spam emails, you can send there, false misleading advertising, charity scams. So there are a lot of places you can report it, and we urge you to report it.
Okay. So let's take a step back for a second. Is it important to report all fraud? So big fraud, I would imagine you would report it, but if it's, maybe fraud against an individual and it wasn't that much money, and I don't, I'm a little hesitant to share that I did this and maybe got sucked in by the scam. I'm just curious your thoughts on, should we be reporting all the fraud?
Yeah, Allison, that I would say it's a very fair question, because I would say embarrassment is part of it, right? Being caught on fraud. There is actually a statistic the Canadian Anti-Fraud Center posted, and there's less than 5% of total number of fraud victims that report their experiences. Wow. Yeah, and it's actually very low and very unfortunate, because some people don't, especially if we think of smaller businesses, mom and pop shops that don't go online and stuff like that. It's really important to report fraud. So 15% of businesses with fewer than 20 employees report credit card fraud. So the credit card fraud specifically is very important to report, because the fraudsters will be caught. They often hit multiple businesses, and if they're working in like one city, it will be easier to catch them if more businesses reported it, right? Especially small local areas in a short period of time. Yeah, so I would say yes, it is important to report fraud, even if it's small and little, because you are protecting your neighbor, you are protecting your community.
Yeah. Okay. And again, I would say that even in recently, I live in Guelph, so I've seen some posts on social media from the Guelph the police service in Guelph here that have made posts about fraud, warning people, and they can only do that because there are people reporting the fraud. So I think, helping to reporting the fraud helps people to hopefully avoid it in the future.
Yeah, being a victim. So
yeah. So some fraud is coming through via text. And so is it, and I've gotten them, is it enough to just delete it? Even if I don't click on the link, can I just be deleting it?
I would say it's important to report it. So there are a lot of phone providers, they have a spam phone number that you can either you click on your phone text messages, and then you click on report fraud. So I would say you should report it with your provider and then block the number. But I think reporting it to your provider is important. Some of them even have a really cool service of detecting fraud. So there's actually like a separate folder where you can go in and look at the spam that was identified that you haven't even received, and they know how to catch it. So that's like some phones do that as well.
Okay. Great. So how can businesses better protect themselves?
Yeah, sure. I'll take this one. I mean, sounds scary of all the fraud that we just covered. Katrina, there's so many different kinds that it's hard for all the businesses to keep up to date with everything that's happening. I would say that it's really important to ensure that your employees are educated and be vigilant and really be up to date with current scams and current reports. So do share all of that information with your employees, because you want them to be just as skeptical as you are. To teach them also the same thing. So don't click on all of these ads, don't open the links, right? Don't be too fast to react. Have a good IT security system in place at your work, so that at your business, so that downloading is not as easy. Talk to your, and then what I would say, like from working at the bank, is talk to your bank about multi authentication online access, right? So when you are entering passwords, when you're logging into online banking, your payment services, each bank has a multi-authentication online access. And really what that is that it can mean two things. One person will enter the payments, another person will approve them. Or if one individual is doing it all, it really means that not only do you require a password that will get you into that system, but you can get a VPN token that changes every 60 seconds. So along with the password, you'll have to enter that token in. And really that protects you from the fraudsters. So if the fraudsters got into your system and were able to get your username and a password, for example, they still can't access any of the information without having that token. And the number is also changing every 60 seconds do help mitigate anybody accessing your system while you're there. I think that would be a kind of the biggest takeaway there.
Okay, great. What kind of tips would you provide, not only business owners, but also their employees? You talked about making sure the employees are as skeptical maybe as you are. Are there any other tips you would provide?
Yeah, I would say, like I said, it is employees are your first line of defense against cyber attacks. It is important to educate them, like we said, and continue reminding them of those wrong clicks and giving access, but also have them be careful when sharing company information as well, right? You have to ensure that you know who you're talking to and why you're talking to them. Strengthen your remote access, so managing policies and procedures. We talked about implementing those multi-factor authentications, IP address whistling. So, and then the other thing, limits on remote desktop protocols such as access and remote network monitoring will also, or should be, a part of your IT systems. And then kind of plan your response to a phishing attack, right? Know who you'll contact. So just like Ekaterina said, when who to contact, what information to have, kind of have that ready and have that be available to share with your employees, so that they also know who to contact if any of this fraud occurs, so that you can act fast. The faster that you act, the faster that you report, the higher chances are that you'll be able to stop it or have recourse.
Yeah. I think what you've said is the skepticism is really important, as is the taking a few seconds when you receive an email that just doesn't seem normal, or an email that you would normally receive. And I had an experience where I received an email, and when I receive an email that I'm just not sure about, I always go to their email address to make sure that it's a proper email address. And in this case it was, and it was a legit company, but my skepticism rose because they were sending me an email that did not make sense. Like, they were asking me to sign something, and I don't have any business with this company, even though it's a legit business. And so, I responded saying, I'm not sure if you sent this to me in error. And the response I got back was, oh, I've been hacked. Don't click on anything. Don't click on the link. So, reviewing the email address is important, but also just really thinking about does this email make sense that I'm even receiving it, and double checking first?
Yeah.
Yes, for
I
sure.
I
When
would
in
want
doubt.
to, yeah.
Go ahead, Tanya.
I was gonna say, when in doubt, it's always good to double check, because
Yeah.
sometimes the name and the email may appear, but the content or what they're asking for is just out of the ordinary when you're
Right.
used to working with individuals. So it's
Right.
always the best to pick up the phone and call.
Yes. Yeah. Katerina, did you have anything to share?
Yeah, I would want to share a story as well, that one of my friends was a victim of fraud on Instagram, and she is a self-employed working with customers that she gathers herself. So it would make a lot of sense that she had some kind of draw contest, right? And hey, I have a draw. Refer a friend and something. So then people would refer a friend, and then the people would say, oh, great, yes, you won $100 in the draw. Please give me your PayPal information. So that's a big part. They only ask about PayPal information. And then the funny part is that they are interactive. Like if you message them and say, hey, I don't have a PayPal information, could you just like send me an e-transfer, they'll talk to you. They'll pretend to be that person and be like, oh, so sorry, e-transfers are $1.50 and PayPal is free. Like they will know stuff, right? They will pretend to be that person. So that was just recently that happened to my friend. So report it and be vigilant.
Yeah. Yeah. Good.
Sure, that's their job, so they have all the time in the world.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. So if there are any businesses on our webinar right now that have been fortunate that they have avoided having any fraud against them, should they care about this topic? If they haven't had any experience with fraud, should they care?
Yes, I would say if you don't want to lose money, then you care, right? For example, if we, for example, touch the credit card fraud, you are a store, you sell local artists' products, and a fraud occurs with your business. This person buys a bunch of product from you, and then account holder calls and disputes the transaction. They initiate a chargeback so they can get the money back because the account holder actually didn't buy this stuff. So not only you're out your product, but someone has to pay for the charge. So usually that falls under the card network, like Visa, MasterCard, or the merchant. So sometimes if your business accepts fraudulent payment and the credit card company says, oh, we decided that it's your responsibility because A, B, C, D, and they give you a reason, plus you'll have to pay the chargeback fees. So chargeback fees sometimes are coming from $20 to $100. Additionally to the cost of the product and service that you lost, you might be on the hook for the credit card processing because those very specific cards that give customers higher points, you will be charged more to accept those. So even if you are not out the money, but you're only out the product, you still paid the fee for the processing, right? Between 1% to 4%. Costs add up quickly. So it's basically thinking about that specific idea of credit cards. You might be a victim of that at any point if you accept credit cards. And sometimes you don't think you lose any money, but you would. At least you lose your product, you lose the percent of the charge. So you need to know your rights, right? And adopt a policy of not taking the credit cards on the phone, just redirect them to the website, and then look into the e-commerce solutions that provide proper security, right, for online transactions. And if something occurs like somebody else is picking it up and somebody else called, require customers picking up to provide this credit card that they paid for on the phone, so then you can see this card and ID of this person who's picking it up. So that's another advice there.
Okay.
So yeah, if you want to lose money, you should care about this topic.
Okay, great. If you wanted to leave one major takeaway for people listening today, what would it be?
Allison, it's really hard to just give one
Yeah.
big topic of fraud,
Yeah.
right? I mean, the biggest thing is that really can happen to anyone at any time, and the biggest takeaway is really not to forget about it, but constantly stay on top of it, if possible. Educate, keep up with technology and the new changes to ensure that you have the right protection in place. Learn about the new fraud out there. Ensure that you're educating your employees, sharing the same with them. Ask your financial institution too for tips and what they have in place and what kind of assistance to help you better protect your business. Right, so it's very difficult to have one, but I would say that anything that you have in fraud, it's really just to share with your employees as well, because you might think that you're protected, and then in the meantime, your employee might open the same link and click on that email. So
right. And if they do click on that link, having a process in place where somebody else is notified.
Exactly.
Yeah. Katerina, did you have anything to add about takeaways?
I would just say nobody's protected. That would be the one thing to take away from this. Nobody's protected. Be vigilant. Yeah.
Okay. We mentioned at the beginning, seeing an increase in fraud. Has it been an unusually large increase in fraud that you've been seeing over the past little while?
I would say yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
okay.
I would say specifically with the pandemic and online, and unfortunately the availability of financial assistance. There's a lot of fraudulent financial assistance checks, etc. And also just the other part of it of some people losing jobs, more people unfortunately stepping into the shoes of being a fraud person or scammer because the economy and so many people are in hard situations, right?
Yeah. Just a reminder for our listeners, if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. I guess one of my final questions is, we've talked about how overwhelming fraud can be, and you've talked about really great ways that you can protect yourself and your business from fraud. But I think, if this is not something that you've thought about before, even the solutions or putting those protective things in place could feel overwhelming. And so I'm wondering if a business owner is looking for some assistance on how they can protect their business, can they go into your bank? Can they go into their bank and get that kind of assistance?
Yeah, I would say yes. So when it's financial institution fraud, the best thing, the fastest thing, instead of driving, calling 1-800 number, that's a toll-free 1-800 number, because even then, if it's on the account, then we can put a message on the account and maybe like stop withdrawals temporarily on this account. They can call their specific advisor if they have a specific advisor that they deal with. But 1-800 number is 24/7.
Okay.
And the advisor could be, having a meeting with the client or presenting at the at this beautiful event today. So I would say the 1-800 number would be the most the fastest route, and then go to the branch as well. The tellers and client advisors are also vigilant, and that's why some clients, when they get a hold on their check, or when we ask too many questions about why the urgency, people get frustrated. But this is our training. We're here to protect our clients.
Right.
Yeah,
and from
sure.
Oh, go ahead, Tanya.
Allison, I was just going to add to that as well. I know that really get some tips from your financial institution as well, so you can stay up to technology, because one of the features that was added within the last few years to online banking is that you're able to log into your online banking and lock your card, so your debit card and your credit card. So if you suspect that there was fraud on the card, or that you lost it before even getting through to the 1-800 number and getting a live person on the phone, you're able to lock that card to prevent any further purchases.
Yeah.
So yeah, just ensure that you're up to date with all the changes and the new tips from the bank.
Okay, that's great. And I had no idea that was possible to lock your
Yeah.
card. So that's a great tip. And I think from a proactive standpoint, obviously we mentioned at the beginning that the attendees of our webinar will be getting a link of this webinar recording. So I think there's been some really great resources and tips given in the webinar today. And we'll also have this up on our website if there are any businesses that weren't able to join us. I think we have come to the end. I don't see any other questions. So I want to thank you, Tanya and Katerina, so much for your time and for joining us today and sharing your expertise. Is there anything else that either of you wanted to add, or have we shared all of the information?
I mean, if anything comes up later, Allison, from any of the participants, feel free to email us and we'd be happy to answer those questions. Sometimes I find that people think of a question after the fact, which happens. But thank you so much for this opportunity. It was a pleasure being part of this event.
Great.
Yeah, I will echo what Tanya said. It's always great to share the expertise that we have, and I'm really grateful to be invited to an event such like this, because now we know that more people are aware of the types of fraud and will be more vigilant. So it's amazing. Thank you.
Yeah, that's great. Well, thank you again, Tanya and Katerina, for joining us today. This brings us to the end of today's session. I'd also like to thank our sponsors. So our title sponsor of the series, Manulife, our platinum sponsor of the series, Immigration Partnership, and of course, our March sponsor, which is RBC. And finally, thank you to everybody who joined us today. As a reminder, we host a new business success series every Wednesday between 1 and 2. Join us next week for Strengths-Based Leadership, how to maximize your leadership potential by focusing on your strengths. Michael Snyder, president of Future Focus, will present a simple concept that will have a measurable impact on your efficiency, engagement, and purpose as a leader. He will also present ways that you can bring this concept into your teams that will vastly improve the team dynamic, engagement, and performance in your company. We hope to see you again next week. And for full details and to register for that webinar, please visit greaterkwchamber.com. Please share this series with your friends and colleagues. Join us every Wednesday afternoon for the next edition of the Greater Kitchener-Waterloo Chamber of Commerce Business Success Series, brought to you by Manulife, Immigration Partnership, and this month's sponsor, RBC. Because it's Wednesday, it's Business Success Series. Thanks again so much, Katerina and Tanya, for your time.